people who grew up in a conventional system.
So the people at the bottom of the scale earned less in the areas that had had a grammar school there?
That's right, and you can imagine the people earning at the bottom of the scale, these aren't the people who go to the grammar school. And so the real story from this research is that we know about the winners from the grammar schools, but what this is showing is that there are losers from the grammar school system as well. So people who don't make it to the grammar school and are at the very bottom of the distribution, they do worse than they would have done if they'd grown up in an area where they were from.
I suppose the key question is, are the people from the bottom of the social scale getting into the grammar school in the first place? Were you able to tell that?
That's not really what we were focusing on, but we do know from other work from our colleagues at the University of Bath and the University of Bristol who've looked into access to the grammar schools, and generally there are people from the poorer backgrounds who do get to the grammar school, and for them it's very good, they do well, but they're a very small number, and so for the vast majority of children, even children with the ability and the grades to get into grammar schools, the vast majority won't get in, and the access is very unequal. And so in terms of social mobility, grammar school system is actually really bad, because okay, for the few that get in, it's great, but for the majority of the poor children who won't get in, and they'll end up doing worse than if they're in an area where there were no grammar schools.
Do we know if it's changed over time? Because people's memory of grammar schools, certainly people who sat the 11 plus in the late 50s and in the 60s, their memory is that they came from big working class communities where a lot of the children got into grammar school.
Well, lots of people know people who grew up in poor families and went to a grammar school and were saved by that system, but the reality is that back in those decades, in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, it's still the case that the vast majority of poor children don't get it. So for every person that you could meet who says, yes, the grammar system saved me, and I was from a poor background and I went on to do very well after the grammar school, there will be many, many more who didn't get into the grammar school, and as I say, our research suggests that they end up doing worse than they would have done if there were no grammar schools.
Dr. Matt Dixon, tell us your experience, please. Was a place in the grammar school your ticket to a better education and a better life? Call us now, 03700 100 444, or text 84844. If you tweet it, #YourNews. Let's go back to our callers now. Sophie Barton is in Gloucestershire. Sophie, was 11 plus your ticket to a better life? Did you pass and go to grammar school?
Oh God, I failed my 11 plus, and it was a real disaster for me. But my children have passed it, so I failed it and went to private school, and my husband went to grammar school, and I wanted my kids to get a good education. I didn't go to university, and my husband did. I've gone on to do a master's degree now in later life, realising that I'm actually not silly.
So why did you, so if you went to private school, we all think of private school, don't we, as the school that really can add value.
I don't agree with that at all. I think if you pay for an education, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a good one.
So what happened to you? Why was it a disaster?
Well, I think education has a lot to do with nurturing at home, and I don't necessarily think that it's financial. I think if your parents support you and you're happy at home, then you're far more likely to be better at school. And I wasn't terribly happy at home at the time that I was doing my exams, so I didn't achieve very well. But obviously in later life, I managed to. My children have gone on, I've got 3 kids in grammar school, and I've chosen to send them there. I mean, it's interesting. I agree very much with the last caller, Matt Dixon. I thought that was very interesting. The rest of the children that don't get into the grammar schools in the area, it makes quite a large difference. It means that all the bright kids really go to the grammar school, and then what's left is not great. I think the education system in the country should be equal for everybody.
But you find yourself, sorry to interrupt, you find you're living in an area with 11 plus, and so you've done your best for your own children.
Yes, absolutely. But I am also fully aware of the fact that
turn right onto the A429 at the end of the road.
That are just as bright as them, and that leaves them with having to study in an area that doesn't necessarily have the same positive culture. Some of your previous callers have talked about being at grammar school, and there's a culture there of doing well, of wanting to go into the profession